Malamidou. Okay, recording in progress. Starting again. Pascal Darcque, Haïdo, Koukouli-Chryssanthaki, Dimitra, Malamidou, and Tsirtsoni are our first speakers who will be talking on recent investigations at the Neolithic and Bronze Age settlement of Dikili Tash, Eastern Macedonia, Greece. Dikili Tash is one of the prehistoric sites in northern Greece with the longest history of investigations, more than 100 years from its first identification, 63 years from the start of systematic excavation conducted in the frame of a Greek-French collaboration, and also the one with the longest sequence of occupation from the mid-7th to the end of 2nd millennium BC, which means early Neolithic to late Bronze Age in Aegean terms, of course, in addition to historical and modern periods. This lecture will provide a synthetic presentation, including results from the current program started in 2019. A few words about our speakers, who are all very well known, but from my side, I would like to say a few words about them. Pascal Darcque is Emeritus Research Director at the CNRS, French National Center for Scientific Research. He has excavated the Dikili Tash, Malia, Crete, and Bassit in Syria, late Bronze Age levels. He has conducted also extensive work in southern Greece in the frame of his study on Mycenaean settlement patterns. Haïdo Koukouli-Chryssanthaki is Emeritus Director of Antiquities in the Greek Ministry of Culture. She has conducted research at many important archaeological sites in Eastern Macedonia, prehistoric, such as Dikili Tash, Kastri, Promachon Topolnitsa, and Skala Sotiros on Phasos, as well as antique, Avdira, Amphipolis, Philippi. Dimitra Malamidou, our third speaker, is Director of the Ephorate of Antiquities in Ceres. She has conducted excavations at many prehistoric settlements in Eastern Macedonia, such as Dikili Tash, Krioneri, Limenaria, Ofrinio, and in ancient Amphipolis. She recently initiated 2 new research projects at Toumba Seron, jointly with the British School at Athens, and at Terpni, jointly with the École Française d'Athènes. And finally, Tsirtsoni is a researcher at the CNRS in France. Besides Dikili Tash, she has conducted fieldwork in different parts of Bulgaria. Her current research concerns settlement and chronology of the Aegean Balkan area between the 7th and the 2nd millennium BC. Thank you all for your patience. And now, who among the 4? Zoe?
Thank you, Andreas. And I thank, of course, my 3 partners for entrusting me to speak on behalf of the team. And I thank you and Zorita for inviting us to open the present cycle of conference of lectures. I will start first with some information about the geographical situation of the site for those who are not familiar with it, and about the history of research so far. So Dikili Tash lies, as you see here, to the east of the important archaeological site of ancient Philippi, in the southeastern part of the Drama Philippi plain, in the Greek region of Eastern Macedonia. Between the 2 sites, Dikili Tash and Philippi, stands today the modern town of Crenides, whose name recalls the very first town founded by the Greeks at this spot in 360 BC. The toponym Dikili Tash, which means upright stone in Turkish, dates from the Ottoman period, but is again connected with ancient Philippi. It refers indeed to a big funerary monument that stood originally by the side of the Roman Via Egnatia, at a very close distance from the prehistoric tale. Interestingly, it is from here that started also the history of investigations of the prehistoric tale. Indeed, there existed here, until the beginning of the 20th century, adjacent to the Roman monument, a khani, a sort of guest house, where stayed the first teams of French archaeologists who were excavating at Philippi. And it was one of them, Louis Renaudin, who made the first soundings on the tale in 1920 and 21, and proved with his works that the tale was prehistoric, mainly Neolithic, as suggested a few years earlier by Welch and Blegen, based on surface finds. But the systematic excavations started 40 years later. I show you here the successive research programs with the dates and the directors of each, but I will not detail them, just remind the first research program, Dimitris Theocharis and Jean Dehaye in the 1960s, 1970s, Haïdo, Koukouli-Chryssanthaki and René Treuil in the 1980s and 1990s. Then the four of us since 2008 until 2013, and again a fourth program started at 2019 and is still in progress. All these programs are conducted in the frame of a long-lasting Greek-French collaboration between the Archaeological Society at Athens and the French School at Athens, with further financial support in the recent years from the French Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Institute for Aegean Prehistory, and other institutions and larger research programs, ERC, ANR, etc. Our successive teams count members and collaborators from several institutions, Greek and French, but also from other countries, especially in recent years. In the present fourth program, we made an important opening towards colleagues and institutions from Bulgaria. Allow me to remind here that the archaeological mission of Dikili Tash received in 2020 one of the greatest academic distinctions that exist in France, accompanied by a substantial grant, the Simone e Cino del Duca Foundation Great Prize of Archaeology. And we are, of course, all very proud and very happy because this allowed us to do a lot of things on the field, but also beyond. The results of the first program are today almost fully published in the 3 monographs that you see in the upper row, and are also released 2 volumes from the operations conducted after 1986. You see them in the bottom row. One which contains mainly the work of Laurent Lespèze about the landscape and evolution of settlement in the drama Philippi Plain during the Holocene in general, and one which presents all the context, stratigraphy, chronology, and evolution of the site, as this was known at the end of the 3rd program. We are now preparing the volumes with the thematic studies, and of course, there exist many other published papers. You can find information about all these in those data websites, Dikili Tash website, and the site of the French Ministry of Culture in these addresses. Let's talk now about the site. You see here the general topographical plan with the different excavated areas. The colors that you see correspond to the successive programs. Red dots are core drills carried out in 2 series, one in 1993 in the frame of the second research program, and the other in 2010 and 2012 during the third program. Thanks to these works, we know that the site has been occupied more or less continuously over a period for more than 5,000 years, from the second half of the 7th millennium BC to the end of the 2nd millennium BC. That is, according to the Aegean terminology, the beginning of the Neolithic period until the end of the Late Bronze Age. We have also more or less substantial remains from the historical and modern times, from 4th century BC to 19th century AD. Thus, in total, we are talking about a sequence of almost 8,500 years. You see on this slide a schematic section of the tell with the deposits of the successive periods as they are recorded in the different excavated sectors and the drills, and also a diagram with a modeled chronological sequence as this has been deduced from the processing of the available radiocarbon and thermoluminescence dates. Until now, we have investigated with excavation only levels that are stretching back to 5,400 BC. The lowest levels, corresponding to the earlier 1,000 years of habitation, are known only through cores, and their excavation is actually the main objective of the current program. In the next 30 or 35 or 40 minutes, we will present in chronological order our main knowledge about the successive occupation phases and discuss the relations with phenomena in the broader Aegean and Balkan area, insisting, of course, on the most recent data. We will start with the earliest phase, with the beginning, which, as we said, are known only through cores. The existence of such early layers, so the term early and middle Neolithic that we're using here describes the period from the mid-7th to the mid-6th millennium BC. So it is used according to the Greek and the Aegean terminology. The existence of such early layers was established in 2010 by combining analysis of sediments and archaeological material and confirmed by a series of high-precision C14 dates. The first settlers seem to install themselves to the north and east part of the future tell, probably in order to be as close as possible to the water source that springs there. What is important is that we have not only one or two very early episodes of occupation separated by gaps, but a very tight, almost continuous succession of occupations, which attest of the site's successful development practically from the beginning. Indeed, although we do have evidence in the sedimentary record of some change in the local environment, namely a rise of the water level in the pond formed around the source, you see it here in the core C3, which is possibly connected with a rapid climate change event of 8,200 Cal BP, that is 6,200 Cal BC, and which provokes a temporary shrinkage of the settlement, seen here in core C10. The site is again expanded immediately after that and practically over the entire surface of the future tell. This is the orange line in the graphic, in the plan here. Before moving to the next period, I would like to say a little more about the historical significance of these discoveries. The first reason is that they really filled a gap in our knowledge about the Neolithization of northern Greece and the Balkans. Until 2010, there was no known site, indeed, prior to 5,500 BC in the entire region of Eastern Macedonia, and the idea existed that the area could have remained uninhabited while all the neighboring areas were already settled since several centuries, the Aegean Thrace and Thessaly possibly since the mid-7th millennium, and the southern Bulgaria since the end of 7th or the beginning of 6th millennium BC. But the earliest dates from Dikili Tash, all from primary depositional contexts, proved to be roughly contemporaneous to those of Aegean Thrace and Thessaly, showing that the area was involved in the same overall population movements from Anatolia to Europe. The second reason is the connection of these movements with the rapid climate change event of 8.2 thousand years BP. It has been suggested, indeed, that the Neolithization of the Aegean and the Balkans was a more or less direct consequence of the harsh environmental conditions created in Anatolia during this major climatic event and which pushed people to move. Evidence from the Dikili Tash is among those who contributed to revise this scenario. The fact that the settlers were maintained at this spot despite the change in environmental conditions shows the remarkable capacity of adaptation and resilience of the inhabitants. I return now to the overall sequence and move to the next occupation period, which, as I said, is the first investigated through proper excavation and one of the best known in the settlement. It is the period called Late Neolithic I in the Aegean terminology, corresponding to the Middle and Late Neolithic in East Balkans, the phases Karanovo 3-4, and Late Neolithic in West Balkans, phases Vincha A and B. Deposits of this period have been excavated so far, mainly on the southern slope of the Tel in sectors B1 and B2, the purple one, of the first program, and 1 and 5 of the second program. The best documented contexts are those brought to light in Sector 5, the House of the Bucranium, named after this real bull's skull, which is modeled with clay, one of the very few such objects known in the Balkans, which was found fallen on the floor of a building. The destruction of this building was accompanied by fire, which preserved not only the bucranium, but also many other elements of the superstructure from wood and clay, built-in facilities, artifacts, among which several well-preserved vessels, and charred botanical remains. You see here the C14 and TL dates, who place the destruction in the years around 4,900 BC, that is, towards the end of the Late Neolithic I period. Another context, another building is the so-called platform house, built immediately above the previous one, and the courtyard with the storage bins, excavated a few meters to the east, storage bins which contained several liters of charred cereals. I show you here some of the characteristic pottery types of this period. Most of these types are broadly known from other sites in northern Greece or the Aegean and the Balkans in general, like, for example, the black burnished and black topped, but some were identified or understood, let's say, for the first time, thanks to the well-preserved examples from Dikili Tash. For example, the type of carinated jug or the globular jar with the dark painted decoration on light ground, or the tripod cooking pot and the cooking dish. The next occupation period is the late Neolithic II, corresponding to the period that is usually termed Chalcolithic or Copper Age in the Balkans. The phases Karanovo 5-6 and Vincha CD. In Greece, some authors make a distinction between a late Neolithic II stage and the final Neolithic stage, but at Dikili Tash we use the term late Neolithic II for the entire period until the years around 4,300, 4,200. This is undoubtedly the best known phase in the settlement. Its remains have been excavated on the south and east slope, as well as in the center of the mound. And also in the new Sector 9, the new sector that we opened in 2019 in the frame of the new program on the north slope of the tail. The beginning and early stages of the period are known from sectors B2 and 5 in the north, in the south slope. I show them again here. Yes, and you can see here material from the level 5 East 1, which dates in the years around 4,500 BC. The superstructure of this building has not been preserved, but it provided large quantities of artifacts, among which tools, ornaments, figurines, again, other clay artifacts, ceramic vessels with this characteristic incised decoration with the white infill and red paint after firing. But the main decorated pottery classes for this period, and which are at the direct continuity of those of late Neolithic I, are this black on red and brown on cream painted pottery, both painted with manganese paint, and the graphite painted decoration. The former is a typical Aegean trend, whereas the latter is widely distributed in the entire Eastern Balkans as far as the Danube. Investigations with both excavation and core drills in Sector 2 at the southern foot of the tell showed us that something important happens around 4,500 BC. We have here indeed, at this date, the first in situ occupation layer, which is evidence of an expansion of the settlement in an area which until then was literally extramuros, outside the walls. The stones that you see on this slide come from a stone enclosure which stood initially a little higher on the slope and are brought here by erosion at a later stage that we will see in a while. I'll show you here a detail of the stone bed and the sketch showing the original estimated position of the enclosure. And I remind that similar features are known also from other coeval settlements in both Greece and Bulgaria. The best excavated assemblages for the late Neolithic II period are, however, the houses in Sector 6, dating from the mature stages, the mature stage of this period. Their construction might have started around 4,400, whereas their destruction, again accompanied by fire, is securely dated in the years around 4,300, 4,250 BC. Let me remind that part of this group of houses, which are actually 5 and not 4, as previously assumed, were already seen during the first excavations by Dimitris Theocharis in 1967, but the discovery of the full group and the thorough excavation of the 2 easternmost buildings, the houses 3 and 4, took place during the second program in the 1990s, and the westernmost building, House 1, was fully investigated during the third program after 2008. And here we will focus only on House 1, which provided the greatest quantity and even quality of finds, as it was sealed under a thick destruction layer. You see, for example, this two-headed clay object, which was found in situ on the floor of an oven, and another small clay bull's head, a plique, which was detached from a wall. These are nice finds. The house contained more than 50 complete or almost complete ceramic vessels, which represent all the known categories for this period: black on red and graphite painted, of course. You see here some specimens, but also brown on cream, incised with red crust, and of course, many undecorated vessels. Of particular interest is this group of small bowls that you see here, which contained a set of materials and tools of a potter, used exactly for those decorated categories that are present in the house. You see this bone tool, which was stained with manganese, the paint used for the black and red paint. One of the small bowls which contained red ochre, the same material used for the red crust in incised vessels, and another bowl which keeps residues from graphite paint, the same used for graphite decoration on vessels. And we have also a handful of graphite cones also in the same room. In the same house were also found 2 groups of ornaments, one to the south, which contained mostly beads from clay, as well as some beads from stone and copper, and another one a little further to the north, which contained a dozen of spondylus rings and more than 100, some 130 small plaques from boars' tusks, from boar's teeth. You see a detail again here. The spondylus rings have, of course, a very wide geographical distribution, but the small plaques from boar's teeth seem to have parallels only in Bulgaria and South Romania, especially in cemeteries, but also some settlements like these nice groups recently found at Sushina. The particularity of the finds from Dikili Tash, House 1, is that we have here a complete chaîne opératoire, the complete sequence of making with raw materials, half-finished and finished pieces. In the same group were also more than 1,100 beads from stone and a few golden sheets, most of which were rolled around beads. The best parallels for these objects are again found in Bulgaria and South Romania, where they exist even in much bigger quantities, especially in cemeteries like Varna or Duranculac, to mention, or Devnya. And since we speak about gold, let me remind that among the vessels from House 1, there is one brown and cream painted bowl, which is stained with gold paint. This looks like an accident, but we know that gold paint was also used, was also used deliberately for the decoration of pottery at Dikili Tash as a substitute of graphite paint. We know this thanks to a small fragment discovered in Sector 2. This kind of substitution is attested so far by complete vessels in one grave in Varna. The house provided also extraordinary quantities of charred botanical remains, whose processing and analysis is conducted by our colleague Tanya Valamotti and her students at the University of Thessaloniki. You see here a jar which was found full of wild pears, and the graph showing also the other species represented, other kinds of fruits and staples. And this is a fragment from another vessel, another big jar, which was found associated to a concentration of charred grapes and pips, attesting grape processing, and more specifically, winemaking, something that has been confirmed by residue analysis, which showed also that this was red wine, actually. It was made from a red grape. This is so far the earliest evidence of winemaking in the Aegean and Europe, and one of the earliest in the world. Before moving to the next chronological period, I would like to refer to some recent finds from the new Sector 9 on the northern slope, which belong to the same phase, as confirmed also by the C14 dates. Two successive houses were excavated between 2021 and 2023, one whose destruction is accompanied by fire, 9A, house 9A that you see here, and the other not, and which provided pottery and other finds that are practically identical to that of the houses of Sector 6, but also show similarities with other contexts from the same more or less period. And the same is true. This is house 9B with some of its material. And the same is true for the exterior space to the east of house 9B, a space which appears to be a slightly raised platform built on wooden posts in continuity with the house itself, something that we had not seen until now at Dikili Tash. Among the deposits excavated in 2023, we even collected a handful of gold ornaments similar to those of House 1. These are again gold sheets, gold plates, but some of them were found imbricated by 2 or 3. House 9B is unique, however, for another reason. In it, we found in 2022, directly on the floor, the skeleton of a baby, actually a fetus of only 25 weeks old. This is an extremely rare find for the Neolithic of Greece and the Balkans, and please note that this is the first human skeleton in Dikili Tash in general. incredible after so many years of investigation. We will move now to the next period, the final Neolithic period. In Dikili Tash, we were lucky enough to find settlement remains of this period after 4200 BC, which is generally very poorly known phase. It has been assimilated to a lost millennium, and it is very poorly known, not only in Eastern Macedonia, but also in most of Greece and the Southern Balkans. In Bulgaria, it is described with the term final Chalcolithic or transitional period, whereas in Greece, it is included in the final Neolithic or Chalcolithic. We use the term final Neolithic at Dikili Tash, but I remind that we start its use now. We don't use it for the preceding centuries. The troubles observed around 4200 BC have been again connected by many authors with the effects of a rapid climate change event that would have pushed the inhabitants of the plains and valleys to move towards higher altitudes or different environments and adopt a more mobile way of living. The discovery of remains from this period at Dikili Tash, which is so far the only tell settlement in the area with such evidence, invites us to reconsider the scenario or at least nuance the importance of the impact. Remains of this period were found in primary position in the northwest part of sector 6 and in a secondary position in sector 2 at the southern feet of the tell. We have also material of those years in sector 9, the new sector 9, but no distinct layer has been identified so far. The most informative is the layer excavated in sector 6, which was overlay immediately the destruction layer of house 1. It consists of a floor from which start 2 deep plaster pits. The floor and the pits were filled with an homogeneous fill made of building debris, pottery, fragments, a few more or less complete vessels, as well as bones, animal and human, which seem to belong to different destruction episodes, as confirmed also by the dispersal of C14 dates. The fill was a unique event, but the ingredients were probably from different destruction episodes. And immediately after that, we have on this spot an abandonment layer which is formed and which corresponds to the centuries until the reoccupation of the site in the early Bronze Age 1 period. You see here the pits once emptied and some of the vessels retrieved from inside. Most of the pottery of this assemblage uses old techniques and materials, typically here the graphite, but in new combinations. But we have also some true novelties which give the vessels a hybrid character. This cup in particular is clearly in the continuity of previous black on red cups, but has raised handles, upraised handles, which are, to our knowledge, the first such handles ever attested in the Balkans and the Aegean, some 700 years at least before the Baden-like EBA1 scoops. So maybe some of the features that are thought to arrive here at the beginning of the Bronze Age as a result of the arrival of new people or contacts were in fact present in the area several centuries earlier. In sector 2, we have the same overall history, the same overall events, but in reverse position, because here all the layers excavated after the late Neolithic II are colluvial deposits, which are brought here by erosion of the upper parts of the tell. And one of these first such colluvial deposits, which was dated in the years around 4200, 4000 BC, brings down the first wave of stones, which came from the collapsed Neolithic enclosure that we mentioned previously. The first stone bed will be separated from the next one. Here you see them both. Sorry, excuse me. The first one and the second one. They are separated by a layer of abandonment, which corresponds again to the centuries until the reoccupation of the site in the early Bronze Age I period, around 3300 BC. Interestingly, we found similar colluvia and similar stone beds during the 2021 and 2022 campaigns in the new Sector 9, which means that such stone enclosures existed on all sides of the tell. We have at least 3 episodes separated by colluvia without stones, but the study of the ceramic material is still in progress, and we don't have yet any C14 dates allowing their more precise dating. This is how we reach the Bronze Age and the next occupation period, which is the Bronze Age I period, starting, as I said before, between 3300, 3000 and 2900 BC. Layers in primary position, mainly pits, have been excavated in the center of the tell in sector A2 and on the southern slope of the mount on sector 6 above the houses of the late Neolithic II, and in a secondary position also in sector 2 at the southern feet. Probably part of the stone beds that we just saw in sector 9 date also to this phase. I will not insist further on the mobile finds, which confirm altogether what we know already from other neighboring sites, such as Sitagri in Drama Plain or Ezero and Karanovo in Bulgaria. I just want to remind that we are in a phase which is earlier than Troy 1. It's earlier than the period labeled Early Bronze Age I in Anatolia. We will move directly to the next phase, Bronze Age II or 2 and 3 in Bulgarian terminology. That is the years between 2900, 2300 BC, or more probably between 2900 and 2500 BC. Remains of this period were until recently known at Dikili Tash only from the excavations of the first program in the center and on the eastern feet, but now we have also some features in sector 9 to the north. These are pits, one of which, that you see here, has been alternatively used for cooking and for refuse. You see some of the material collected in it. Its neighbor seems to have been used only for refuse, although maybe it was originally prepared for storage, as suggested by the stone dressing seen on one of its sides. And the same is possibly true for the 2 other pits, which were later filled with stones from later episodes of colluvial layers. The excavations of 2019 and 2021 in Sector 7 at the top of the tail allowed us to document or actually confirm what Jean Day had already suspected, that between this phase of advanced early Bronze Age and the next phase known by excavations, which is the late Bronze Age, there is a new gap, which is actually larger than the gap previously reported for the 4th millennium. I show you here the exact location where this small abandonment layer was brought to light and the associated late EBA material. According to the available C14 dates, which are partly unpublished, this gap lasts almost 1,000 years at this spot, at least, and covers the end of the early Bronze Age and the entire Middle Bronze Age from the middle of the 3rd to the middle of the 2nd millennium BC. It should be reminded that this period is missing in the whole of Eastern Macedonia, the mainland at least, and in a large part of Bulgaria, and without much surprise, we would say, it is again connected with the effects of a rapid climate change event whose peak is placed at approximately 2200 BC. The fact, however, that the abandonment of Dikili Tash, at least this area on the top of the tail, happens 300 years earlier, before the peak of the climate event, suggests that this scenario too should be reconsidered. This is the gap. Whatever the reason, the next phase for which we have substantial building remains at Dikili Tash is the Late Bronze Age. And we have excavated layers of this period, essentially in Sector 7, A2 7 in the top of the tail, except for a very small layer seen to the south at the northern wall of Sector 2, and whose interpretation is still a little puzzling. In Sector A2, back in 1974-75, Jean Day had excavated the remains of one apsidal building in which he recognized 2 successive floors. When we resumed excavations in this area in 2008, in order to investigate the continuation of this building and the general layout of the settlement of those years, we realized that there were more late Bronze Age layers above it, actually a small sequence of at least 5 building episodes, and excavated them before interrupting again the works. Therefore, the investigation of the layer to which belonged, presumably, the apsidal building seen by Jean Day has only been possible during the current program in 2019 and 2021. First, we excavated the rests of a neighboring building, which does not preserve any of its outer walls, but only parts of its plastered floor with some rare vessels on it, and the remains of a charred vegetal material, possibly a sort of mud. In the next campaign, we brought to light the remains of another apsidal building, which we named Building B, contemporaneous with the Building C, the one previously mentioned, and coinciding, in fact, with what Jean Day had interpreted as the lower floor of his building. We show you here some details from the inner and outer side of its walls, of the wall of this building B, which are built with the usual technique of raw clay bricks on a stone foundation. This is the usual technique for this period in Eastern and Central Macedonia. The building was found empty, unfortunately, with the exception of these few beads. And I show you here again the plan where you see this the different elements assigned by Jean Day to the earlier state of his building, but which belong certainly or probably to the newly found building B. These holes, this part of the wall, and also this quite unusual clay feature that they had interpreted as an altar, and which we interpret now as the decorated base of a central post, which is not preserved, of course, anymore. And therefore, we propose to keep the name Building A for what they had considered as the second state of his building, and which is, in fact, a different building, slightly later in date, more narrow, with the apse turned to the south, and with narrower walls built with bricks of different shape than building B. I will jump to the youngest of the late Bronze Age layers excavated in this sector, which is a field which contained, among other finds, this fragment of Mycenaean scyphos and a bronze knife, both with parallels in the late Helladic 3C period. If any occupation existed after that, it is now lost, as the whole area has undergone extensive clearing and leveling during the early Roman period. We end this long story with a snapshot on the historical and modern remains, which is also a reminder that Dikili Tash, from the 4th century BC onwards, is a suburb of Philippi, strongly connected with its destiny, and this until the early 20th century AD, and the almost simultaneous, as I said, archaeological discovery of both. Before leaving you, we would like to say a few words about, do I have 3 minutes still? We'd like to say a few words about our projects for the forthcoming years. Concerning fieldwork, the main objective is, as we said at the beginning, the investigation of the earlier Neolithic levels in Sector 9. Sector 9, which is being installed precisely around the core C3 with the full Neolithic sequence. But of course, as we go down, we will continue to find new layers and contexts from the already known periods, late Neolithic 2 and late Neolithic 1. And we expect their investigation to shed new light on aspects that we did not know yet, like this was already done with the unburned house 9B with all the new information it provided. Concerning publications, we work presently for the completion of the thematic studies of the 2nd and 3rd program, but we have already advanced in the preparation of part of the results of the 4th program, especially publication of Sector 7, the Bronze Age remains. In the meanwhile, we publish extensive reports, annual reports, in the Bassit journal, which is a an open access online journal. And finally, we hope that very soon our dream to open the site to the public will become reality. Last October, we submitted to the Greek Ministry of Culture the related studies, which expect to be approved by the Central Archaeological Council. So maybe next time we will be able to invite you for another on-site lecture at Dikili Tash. Thank you very much for your attention.
Bravo.
So